Hello, beautiful lights, and welcome to another episode of From a Medium's Perspective. I am extremely happy and excited about today's show because today I have a gift. Today's gift is Citizen X. Now, you might be going gift and wondering why I meant that. I mean it because I like to show the world from the perspective of people that are encountering things from the other side. So who is Citizen X? Citizen X is the voice of the people. It's your voice, and it represents people that might not specialize in giving psychic or mediumship readings, but they have had encounters with the other side and with spirits. Today, Citizen X and I are going to be talking about encounters with ghosts. At the end of the show, I'm going to be sharing some interesting things that you can do to build your psychic ability. We'll be talking about sensing spirits. But before I introduce Citizen X, I'd like to mention that not all encounters with those on the other side are negative or scary. Today, we've chosen to focus on things that fall in the friendly category. One of the reasons, though, that we do sometimes have encounters with lower vibrational beings on occasion, unexpectedly, is because they have such a low resonance upon crossing that they stay closer to the physical realm than those that have progressed to a more high vibrational state. If you've had a negative encounter, you might want to listen to my past show that we did on psychic self-protection, and you'll find some techniques that will help you stay safe out there in the ethers. So without further ado, I'm going to bring you Citizen X. Welcome, Citizen X.
Thank you, Tracy. It's great to be here.
I understand that you've got some stories for us and some encounters with those that generally stay in the unseen realm. So why don't you kick it off and start sharing some of those experiences with us? I'm so glad that you joined us.
Thank you. Like I said, it's great to be here. And even preparing for this was really a lot of fun because I've had experiences off and on my whole life, but I never bothered to write them down before. It was really fun to watch the progression of how things had changed over time. And I think my experience is not unusual for a lot of people. It began for me when I was a small child, and I think I remembered sensing things when I was probably about 5. That's my first recollection anyway. I, of course, did what most kids would do. I asked my mother what she thought about ghosts. And she said to me very plainly, "Well, honey, there's no such thing as ghosts. I know a lot of people think that there are, but there's no such thing." Well, and knowing that my mother was a truthful person, I took that as word. I believed that, and I think that she believed it, and what part of her didn't believe it, I think she wanted to believe it. So she was telling me there's no such things as ghosts. Well, I was struggling with that because I was experiencing some things that didn't make sense to me otherwise, and didn't seem like other people were necessarily experiencing them either. So I really tried to believe that there was no such thing as ghosts. What ended up happening, I think looking back now, I almost wish I had had a different answer. Because if I had, I wouldn't have had to question my sanity.
Yes.
Because, if there's no such thing as ghosts and this stuff keeps happening to me, well, I must be a little crazy. And I was experiencing things in the house that I lived in, that I grew up in here in Roanoke. It ranged from times when I heard my name to just feeling that somebody was there, occasionally a little chill or a little breeze, but I just felt someone else there. And it made me feel very uneasy, not because it was necessarily negative, but it was unknown to me. And so I felt uneasy and a little unsettled, although I didn't have those words when I was 5 years old. So I was sort of stuck with, oh great, I'm crazy. But there were, I would say, 2 or 3 spirits in that house. I'm very clear that there were 2, and sometimes I think a third. And they existed around the 2 bedrooms that were up on a certain side of the upstairs, one of which was mine. And I had a really hard time going to sleep. I thought I would hear things from time to time and this and that. And nothing really super significant ever happened. It's just that it was there and it was pretty constant. And just in case anybody's thinking, well, that's typical of a child's imagination, because children do have those. Interestingly, about 15 years ago, that same house was up for sale and they had an open house on a Sunday. So I went back to look at the house in part for sentimental reasons. What I found when I was there is that those same spirits were still there. I felt them and it was the same feeling I had had. And even though they had renovated the upstairs differently, they were still hanging in the same place that they were when I was young. So it was really amazing to me. It was a case of I didn't feel comfortable in the attic, so I just didn't go up in the attic. But it was in some ways like experiencing an old friend again. In other ways, it was kind of unsettling again. But I do look back at that and go, I wish I had had a little more information. It wouldn't have all seemed so strange.
Yeah, I think our encounters when we're children or when we're unschooled, if we don't grow up in a community that discusses things from the other side, we are kind of left to wonder what that actually was or why that occurred or what it was that we felt. I don't know if I've ever wondered about my own sanity, and I know you were joking too. There's a lot of pretty real stuff out there.
One of the things that I think actually helped me, believe it or not, was the cartoon Casper the Friendly Ghost. Funny as that may sound, I don't know if you remember the theme song, but it's Casper the Friendly Ghost, the friendliest ghost you know. And the long story short is the adults were a little weird about it, but the kids loved him because they could tell that he loved them and they loved him. So I had this notion in my head, well, if there are ghosts and they love me and I love them, what's the problem? So that was in the back of my mind too, but I still didn't want to dabble with it or anything like that. I think most of my life, what I had happen is that it presented to me when it needed to present. That spirits would come to me sometimes for a reason, and maybe the reason was just so that I would know that they were there. But occasionally there have been times when I've been able to help somebody with a concept, or often a spirit has actually helped me. But first, I had to know that they were there. And I will never forget the first time I absolutely, without a doubt, completely identified the fact that I was looking at a ghost. I was sharing a house with two other women, one of whom I found to be delightful yet very eccentric. And she was always talking about the ghosts that had traveled with her since she was a baby, and she remembered playing with them when she was 2 years old, and there were 8 or 9 of them and all this. And because she was so eccentric, I sort of took it with a grain of salt, not really believing, not really disbelieving, just And the other woman in the house didn't believe her at all. And she would just sort of egg her on. That was kind of funny. This one day I woke up and my schedule was a little different. I was the equivalent of a second shift. So I heard footsteps upstairs and I heard the door close. I'll call this woman Mary. That way she can remain anonymous if she wants to. I thought to myself, well, Mary's upstairs. And I looked in the backyard and Mary's car was gone. And I thought, well, maybe Mary had company last night. Maybe she had someone over. Eventually, the walking continued and whatever, and I thought, I'm really not comfortable with somebody in the house that I don't know. So I think I'm going to look up the stairs and tell this person that they just kind of need to leave. So I was opening the door, and I was expecting to see some nice young man up at the top of the stairs, and that's not at all what I saw. I saw a woman who I could, for lack of a better explanation, sort of see through. She was young, maybe 22-ish, was wearing a long pink nightgown type shift type of thing, and she had her arms crossed around her belly, and it was almost this instant knowing that she was very sad, and I felt like she had lost a baby. That was my impression. I never heard that, but that was just when I looked at her, I just felt like, oh my gosh, she's lost a baby. And she looked down at me, and I looked up at her, and I went, oh my gosh, I'm actually seeing this. So I just looked up at her and I said, it's okay, it's all right. Why don't you just go back in the room and rest, but everything's okay. And she did. And the door closed again. And I was pretty wigged out. It just really blew my mind. And I thought, oh my gosh, they're real. Mary's friends are really there. She was not making this up. We waited, and when I got home, the two of them were sitting at the table, and they were talking about this again, and the other roommate was just egging her on. And, of course, she didn't believe. I just looked right at Mary, and I said, "So, who's the woman in the pink?" And she went, "Oh, you saw her." And the other woman who didn't believe went, "Oh, expletive." She ran into the back bathroom, closed the door, and I'd never seen anybody turn that funny shade of whatever it was. She was white and red and green. And when I saw it, that was something, I guess, to her that she thought, "Oh my gosh, it's real." So at that point, I started beginning to see a little more, mostly because I started to recognize that feeling of somebody's here. Not necessarily uncomfortable, but just, oh, something additional.
Someone is present. We do just know, and we do just feel. And there's quite a big to-do made in the metaphysical community, and especially the reading community, the psychic astrology and mediumship circles about the gifts. Is someone clairvoyant? Is someone clairsentient? Is someone clairaudient? Do they see? Do they feel? Do they hear? It's my premise that it's a natural ability. Just like you had that ability to sense that she had lost a baby. You could kind of see how she was dressed and that type of thing. These are, to me, very natural abilities, and we tend to dismiss them or pigeonhole them into the rare or the weird experience. I just kind of think it's pretty natural.
It has started to feel more that way to me. I think I pick up a little more on the subtle feelings of someone is around. I don't mean it to sound like, ooh, this is some big oody-doo thing. It's really not. It just seems very natural that there are those that are sort of bridging the gap with our realm. And in my experience, it seems like there's a purpose for it. Either they're trying to help us, they want us to help them, they're trying to send somebody a message that they're okay. Sometimes I have no idea why I'm experiencing it. I really don't. It has come to be something of comfort to me now rather than being something that's unsettling.
I think that's well said. I'm still occasionally startled if spirit becomes more physical in their manifestation. That's really good. What else have you got for us today?
I think one of the more poignant times that something happened with me became a message for somebody that I worked with. I'll call her Beth. She had a son who had died by suicide. He had been a teenager, and I didn't know this about her. We didn't work together that much, and I was actually traveling to another city to do some work with a different group in an office. We were sitting at a table for dinner with about 10 people, all of whom were co-workers, and I kept seeing this young man behind her, like pointing at her head like, her, it's her, I'm talking about her. And he's smiling and he's grinning, and it's like I'm trying to get her attention, and she's really cracking me up. I mean, he was giving me the definite message of, she's so funny, she just cracks me up. Kind of this, and I'm proud of her. And the woman had been talking, and I didn't know if I should say anything. Finally, I couldn't help it any longer. He was so wanting to come through, and I looked at her and I said, Beth, I have something that's a little bit odd. And I said, and if you all didn't think I was a little different before, well, this will confirm it for you. But I'm seeing somebody behind you that I believe has passed on, and I don't know who it is. And she got this look on her face. And she says, what does he look like? And I said, well, he's kind of a young man or maybe a teenager, and he's got dark hair. And I said, his features aren't that clear to me, but he's really tickled about you. He's really proud of you and something about him. And she started to cry, and she says, oh, I bet that's my son. And she explained that he had died by suicide. And he's shaking his head, yes. I'm going, yes, that's who he is. And I'm getting goosebumps, and everybody around the table is, their mouths are dropping open, and some are smiling, and one or two are a little wigged out. I said, he just wants you to know that he's just tickled, that you crack him up. It's really funny. He's loving what you're doing. He's proud of you, and just the things that were occurring to me. And then people start looking at him and go, well, do you see anybody behind me? And I was a little overwhelmed. Some cases I said yes or no. I said, let me put it this way. If anybody really wants to know, you ask and I'll answer if you really want to know. But keep in mind, there are other people here and they may or may not be comfortable with it. But I'm perfectly comfortable telling you what I do see or if I don't see anything. Well, one really neat thing happened with that same woman and her son about a year later. We were in a parking lot exiting from some meeting, and her son popped up again. I don't even know his name. And he's doing the same type of pointing at her and laughing. I mean, something about her just tickled him. And he's holding up, it looked like a stuffed lion or something. And I'm going, okay. She goes, what? You see him again, don't you? And I said, yes, I do. And I don't know what he's trying to say. Well, try and tell me. And I said, anything about a lion? I mean, have you been to a circus or a zoo or just anything about a lion? She's like, no. And I'm like, well, a cat or something? She says, no. And she started to give me that look of, you're trying to help, but you're making this up. And I said, I don't know what to tell you, but he's holding up what looks like a stuffed lion or tiger, and he's laughing, he's pointing at you, and he's doing it really urgently. She says, well, I don't know what that is. And I said, okay, well, if it comes to you, it comes to you. If not, it doesn't. And we hugged, and I almost got back to my car. She goes, wait, oh my gosh, I know what that is. I said, what? She says, my husband gave me this stuffed lion for Christmas. She says, and I kind of stuffed it away. I mean, it was cute, but whatever. And he's like shaking his head, yes. And he was just highly amused that her husband would give her this stuffed animal for Christmas. She was a pretty serious soul.
Oh, that is wonderful. And that is an excellent example of how our left brain, when we encounter things from the other side, things that are intuitive, etc., kind of stops us dead in our tracks and makes us question things. It kind of freeze frames us because we're so used to thinking with our left brain. However, the right brain, our intuitive, inspirational, creative parts of us, you're a perfect example, gives concrete evidence of truth. And it's just things that are beyond our knowledge that our brain tries to wrestle with our mind, because the brain being physical and the mind being eternal and spiritual. And that's a wonderful, wow, what an interesting example.
Thank you. It was, and it was doubly so for me because this was the first time anything like that had ever happened. I wasn't accustomed to seeing people and giving messages. It was not in my realm at all. So to have that happen, I mean, I was trying to decipher it too. I was trying to throw it into my left brain. But you know what? No matter what I did with it, it was just so real. Even if she hadn't told me that she had figured out that, I knew there was something that had something to do with that stuffed lion.
Absolutely.
It is interesting how it presents that way. It's kind of like that. Over the course of time, it's been a function of, first I'm kind of recognizing something's there. Then I kind of am understanding the situation, maybe knowing who it is, maybe not, and to just sort of acknowledge that and say, okay, why is this being presented to me? Am I supposed to do something with this? And that has been my greatest struggle because I don't want to freak anybody out. I am finding more and more that when spirit presents itself to someone, it's because the situation is ready for that.
Yes, there is definitely a reason. Absolutely.
Yeah. I've never had anybody totally wig out and go over the deep end or anything. And it has usually been a source of comfort, actually wonder. Fun and funny things sometimes happen. It's really nice to be able to be used by spirit in that way to let someone know. And especially in the case of someone who died by suicide.
Yes.
You know, your worries are always going to be, oh my gosh, this is my child. Is he okay? Is he happier than he was? Is he still feeling hopeless? What's going on? Well, let me tell you, from looking at this guy, he was absolutely fine.
That's so great.
I don't know if his depression was something that he was born with or just something that kind of overtook him or what, but I can tell you for sure he's absolutely fine. And that's a wonderful thing to be able to see and say to someone who's a parent who's lost their child.
Oh, absolutely. Again, I want to mention that that's a wonderful example of how to deepen your contact with spirit. to not just go, oh, that's interesting, and throw it over your left shoulder and be gone with it, to try to reach and to connect and to try to feel what the purpose of that is. I think that's just absolutely lovely example. And I know it meant a tremendous amount to her, and I know that it meant a tremendous amount to him. People do pass in different states, and I definitely have many clients, not everybody that comes through the door, but I think it's the 8th or 10th leading cause of death is suicide in the U.S. People do wonder, like, is that person okay? What's going on for them? And it's different with each soul. As you mentioned, if he had a physical condition along with his depression, of course, that would be eliminated upon passing. But if it was a state of mind, that would have continued at his passing. Not that a fresh perspective wouldn't help that, but it definitely could be continued for a while until deeper understanding is reached. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. I think the next story I'm going to share is one that makes me laugh. It is so funny to me. I had a former partner who was difficult to be with at times. And somewhere somebody is talking about me in the same way, so there you go.
Absolutely.
But anyway, she had a tendency to really do a combination of nagging and just going on and on and on about things and not letting something drop and just getting stuck on it and driving me up a wall. Well, we arrived at her brother's house, and her brother lived in an old Victorian that had been built in the late 1800s. It was a beautiful, beautiful house. There were 2 gentlemen that lived in that house, and upon arrival, they told us about this ghost, and I'm going to call her Annie. I don't remember what they actually called her, but that comes to mind. Mm. And they said, oh, yeah, we have a ghost here. Her name's Annie. She's always been here. This house has been in our family for I don't know how long and passed down to this gentleman. And I asked a few questions about Annie, and they said, well, she generally just stays upstairs. She has her own bedroom. She has a bed she likes to sleep in. And I'm going, huh? But enjoying this. And they said, and she's generally pretty quiet. I mean, we'll hear her walking or something, but if somebody comes in the house that she doesn't like, she will get upset. And if they're being a pain, she'll do things like slam doors. And I'm like, oh.
You said you thought it was cool?
I thought that was kind of, at the same time, I was almost a little disbelieving. Even with all my experiences, I was still like, well, I don't know. Well, they escort us upstairs into our guest bedroom, which is, of course, also Annie's room. And they point at the bed and they say, that bed there, don't sleep in that. That's Annie's bed. And I said, okay. And in fact, there was a little impression there. You see that impression? Yes. Well, we made that bed yesterday morning and nobody has sat on that bed. And I went, oh. So Annie had laid on it and made an impression was what they were trying to say. So we settled into the other bed and didn't think much about it. And I did feel sort of an energized presence in the room, just a little energy, a little sizzle, I like to call it. It was actually very friendly and fine. We got to go to bed that night, and I was thinking about Annie, and I was actually almost having a hard time with the notion of going to sleep, but my partner had already started into a tirade. She was being very difficult. She kept going on and on and on, and I'm like, will you just let it go? Will you just please let this pass? Let's just go to sleep. Well, apparently Annie the ghost was none too happy about her behavior. So what started happening is we started hearing things over in the corner, and I looked up, and my partner looked up. She kept on going, and I'm like, just drop it, would you? Finally, Annie got upset, and she slid something across the dresser and made it fall on the floor. And we both sat up and stared.
Yeah, that would get your attention.
It did, but on the other hand, we were still a little disbelieving, you know. Funny how it takes so much. So she starts back in again, and something else slides all the way across and goes so hard that it hits the wall before it hits the floor. And my partner looks at me with her mouth open, and I just looked at her. I said, you better quit. You just better quit. And she did. Uh-huh. And it has just tickled me that a ghost helped me get her to be quiet.
Well, you know, that's really, that is such an interesting story because they do help us. They're friendly spirits around us. some that are our relatives or friends that have crossed. But think about it from a ghost perspective or a spirit that's crossed over's perspective. Like, how hard do you have to work to get someone's attention in the physical world? Those physical things are always startling.
It was, but it was funny. And I actually went to sleep just giggling that night. And I thought, I can never really bring this up again, or I will never hear the end of it. But oh my gosh, this is so funny. This is just so funny. And so that has remained one of the really lovely redeeming things of, well, somebody else got the last word for a change.
Right? High five to the spirit world.
Indeed. Well, and the other thing that made it interesting, it turns out that the other gentleman in the house, whose house it was, turned out to be a distant relative of mine, and I didn't know that. So distant, it was kind of, you had to go back to great-great-grandmothers were half-sisters type of things. So my other thought was, yes, that was probably one of my relatives.
Oh, yeah, your peeps got your back.
That's funny. But it was very funny. And I would love to hear my ex-partner tell the story, or if she ever does, because that's just fascinating.
Yeah, that is. Well, I know we have at least time for one more story, and I hope you've got one up your sleeve.
I do. I have one about a pet, because I think we all have had pets that we loved dearly and would love to hear from again. My current partner and I had 3 cats at one time, and one of the cats lived to be 24 years old. Mm-hmm. Now, because she was so old, she had a meow that sounded like this really loud fire alarm. And she would do it in the middle of the night, this wah, just so loud. The first time I heard it, I was in an absolute panic. I thought something terrible had happened. She was in some type of physical distress. Something was just terrible is what it sounded like. So I tore down the stairs only to find this cat playing with a sock. She just couldn't hear. She was pretty much deaf, so her meow became really loud so she could hear. And it became her habit to do that every single night. She'd find a sock or something to play with. You'd hear this loud fire alarm. We'd rush downstairs. No, everything's fine. The cat's just having a sock party.
That's hilarious.
It was hilarious. Then came the day when she really just couldn't get up anymore. So we had to help her go to sleep. And we had a vet come to the house. And it was a very touching and sweet moment. Because we had 2 other cats, and we didn't want to shock them with this other cat just missing, we let them see that she had in fact passed before we went to bury her.
That was kind.
And of course, we went through, all the mourning that you do. And the cats were clearly upset that she was gone. Even though she never had a whole lot to do with them. She was sort of her own entity and queen of the house. But I think about 6 months or a year passed. And one night, everybody is sound asleep. 2 people and 2 cats on the bed. And that alarm goes off again. We hear that really loud. The 2 of us sat up, stared at each other's eyes bulging. The 2 cats sat up, looked at themselves, looked at us like, what the heck is that? And so I went back downstairs and I didn't see anything, but what else could it have been? It had to have been the other cat visiting, giving her loud meow. So I could have doubted it if it had just been me that had heard it. I might have said to myself, oh, I probably just dreamt that, or it was in the recesses of my memory or something. But for all 4 of us to suddenly sit up and go, oh my gosh,
right?
It was clear confirmation. No, this is really happening.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that too, because people do kind of wonder, do our pets pass over? Will we ever see them again? And as a practicing medium, I can tell you absolutely. Sometimes it will be a pet that greets us when we cross over and helps us orient to the other side. Other times they join us later, but definitely they do have souls. Wow, that's extraordinary. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was amazing.
I really appreciate you joining us, Citizen X, for the show. We'll be either having you back, maybe to talk about another subject, or having another Citizen X on the show down the line. We don't have a schedule for Citizen X because Citizen X controls their own life. Again, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Is there anything that you felt like you had an opportunity to share that you wanted to toss down before you exit the building like Elvis?
I don't want to exit like Elvis, but Dana.
Oh, right. True. Bad analogy. Sorry, my bad.
I'm sorry. I had a little fun with that. I couldn't help myself. I guess just relax and just know that these things are pretty normal, that others around us are not that far away. They're not trying to impinge on our life or anything like that. They have a purpose. They have a purpose for showing up from time to time. For me personally, I don't want to live in a house where there's a ghost haunting all the time. I don't do that. There is nothing in my house, even though it's a nice old Victorian, nor would I want to allow that to happen. But I am fine with somebody coming to visit. I'm fine with my parents or someone who is a positive energy coming to visit from time to time. But mostly I just want my peace in my own house. So that is my particular boundary. And I would just say, like you've said in so many other ways on your show, it's fine to set the boundaries that you need to set.
Absolutely.
And at the same time, just kind of recognize that if someone is presenting themselves, maybe there's a reason. Just check out what it is.
Yeah. Look a little deeper.
Yeah. And enjoy it.
Well, thank you again, Citizen X. So to top off our show with all this talk about ghosts and having seen some and how do you sense them and all that kind of thing, I have an exercise that you can do. So let's get our psychic knuckles cracking. And today I wanted to talk to you specifically about sensing spirits. From Citizen X's dialogue and sharing of stories before, you can tell that there's kind of a spectrum of communication that occurs. I think of it as them wanting to communicate with us at one hand, and then us wanting to communicate with them on the other. I see it as a continuum of awareness. The occurrences where they appear to us are more spontaneous, and that would be considered maybe spontaneous clairvoyance. But when you develop your gift and are able to tune yourself as an instrument and become aware of some of the frequencies and vibrations on the other side, then that enhances your ability to connect on demand as your awareness grows and your ability to turn on and turn off there. So how do you sense spirit? If you have never had an encounter or you feel like it's beyond your control, like it's just something that happens and you don't know how it happens and you don't know how to turn it on or turn it off. Well, I think of it sort of like in the physical world, that we sense the same way the spirit world. So if you've ever felt like someone was walking behind you, you might have turned around to look and see. That's a form of sensing. If you're in your home and someone walks into the room, you feel them come through the room. You might not have to turn to look to feel who it is, because there's a certain vibration that comes with that person into the room there. Another thing is, have you ever gone up to someone's house and maybe they have a car in a garage or they park behind the house, and you walk up to the door and you just know whether or not they're home or whether the house is empty? Or maybe even to the extreme where you've come home and you can feel whether someone's been in your home or not. You can just kind of sense that things are right or wrong. So I think that that ability is like that. I think of it as having eyes and ears and fingers, in a way, and gut instinct in every cell of our being. It's a very diffuse awareness. When you develop your gift, it's more of a diffuse awareness, meaning that it isn't focused like looking with a sharp eye to see if you catch a sense of movement. It's more of a feeling and a connection. Because usually the natural form of spirit to communicate is mind to mind, and also through emotions and feelings. And they're actual stories that are told through the emotions. And being clairsentient is one of those terms. Being empathic would be another. when you are able to feel the emotions and stories of what's gone on, like Citizen X did, sensing that the woman in her first story had lost a baby. How would she know that? And I would pretty much guarantee if you went back in history and found out who had lived there and knew some relatives and tracked it back, she would have found out absolutely that that's what happened. And what's interesting is that spirits can come to us through time at any time. So time and space are really not a boundary. So when you're connecting empathically with a spirit that has crossed as a medium, it doesn't really matter when they passed, whether it was 10 minutes ago or whether it was 10 days ago or 10 months ago or 10 years ago or 10 millennia ago. That soul, that identity is still intact and can still be felt. As you do connect, I recommend that as you become aware that there is someone there, or you have that feeling, as Citizen X was talking about, that someone is present, that you just pause a minute and just quiet yourself and sense through your whole body, because your body is an instrument, sort of like an antenna of the earth or an antenna of spirit, either way. That is a sensing instrument. Just allow yourself to feel, is that person male or female? What's their personality like? What's going on for them? And just get a feeling for what's going on. So I really appreciate Citizen X being willing to have shared her stories. It lets me know that my premise that people have a natural ability that they can develop at any time, should they choose to focus that direction, is true. And I've seen it over and over with my students. I have a short meditation that I picked out for today. We had been talking about layers of the aura and different things in previous shows, but this one I found and I just really liked it. It's a chakra meditation. So if you'd like to relax, and if you're driving, please keep your eyes open, or if you're operating heavy equipment or need to keep an eye on something, you can still relax with us, but stay alert. Base chakra is red. I am connected with the energy of Mother Earth. My body, mind, and spirit are grounded, centered, and purified. Sacral chakra, orange. I love all dimensions of myself. I delight in weaving the creative tapestry that is my life. Solar plexus chakra, yellow. My will and divine will are one. I am connected to the abundant flow of the universe and easily manifest my dreams. Heart chakra, green. My heart is open to receive the energy of love. I radiate this essence. I walk my path with ease and grace. Throat chakra, blue. I am aligned with my highest truth, and I communicate this with love and honor. My words echo softly within the universe. Third eye chakra, purple. My mind is open to new vision. I expand my awareness through my higher self. Crown chakra, lavender. I am connected to the divine source of the universe. I am light. I trust. And unfortunately, I didn't take the reference for that. It is on the internet. If you were to Google the words, I'm sure you would find it. I would like to thank you for joining us this week. I appreciate your joining us. If you are interested in contacting me, my information is mediumtracylockwood.com, or you can friend me on Facebook at Psychic Medium Tracey Lockwood. Thank you again for joining us and taking a look at life from a medium's perspective. And remember, it's never inappropriate to be kind, and without integrity, you have nothing.